welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading. Today's exciting video is going to be about our Stihl O51. We just finished putting it all together, building it out of parts from two different saws. And I did a video on it a while back, talking about my friend Randy who gave it to me and how he ended up with it. And it was kind of a stopping point for a while, and his brother had a part saw that he threw in, because apparently his brother used to use these in a commercial logging and had a bunch of parts from saws they'd worn out. But anyway, I was able to finally get all the pieces I needed and finish it, so I took all the best parts from both saws to build one complete good one. So the things that I did, I had to replace the muffler because it was no good. There was three of them, but they were all bad, so I replaced that. I had to rebuild the fuel system completely, unplug the fuel cap, replace the starter with a good one, and he gave me several bars and chains on it. This chain here was really worn out, and I have to replace it. But the other thing is the original one had a broken piece on the top here. It was missing the throttle lock and all the pieces for that, so the part saw had all that. Plus the other thing that I kind of like, this is what the top of came with it originally, and it had a metal plate here. It said O51 AV, and the part saw apparently, or one of them was an older one, and it had the neat top here. It says Stihl O51 AV, so I decided to use that one. The other thing that I had to do was had no spark, so I put in an ignition module. So we'll talk about the features. First year they made this apparently was about 1971 or 72, I should say, and it's 89 cc. It's rated at 5.8 horsepower. It weighs 23 pounds with a 14-inch bar. It has a 404 skip tooth chain. The thing that's unusual about this too for a big saw, it doesn't have a manual override on the oiling system. My 075 does, which is displacement wise is 111 cc. But anyway, these are laid out pretty nicely. You know, your ignition switch is right here and your choke is right here. Of course the air cleaner is right under here. And you get a throttle lock right there, like that. Spark plug's easy to access. Oil fills right on the top, and fuel fills right here. The weaknesses of this saw originally were twofold. Lousy ignition system. Now the real early ones had points ignitions, but when they went to electronic ignitions they had tons and tons of failures. Had to recall a bunch of them and come up with a better system. And the replacement ones, they actually gave you a lifetime warranty as long as you owned the saw to keep the ignition going. The other thing they had is this poor quality Fairbanks bore starter, and on a big saw like this it's not good because it was not designed really for big high compression saws or anything else. It was designed for low horsepower two strokes like West Bend cart engines or Power Products lawnmower ranches or something, you know, marginal horsepower and small displacement. But they used them on everything. I ended up with a 1971 Skidoo snowmobile with a 340 twin in it. It has the same crappy starter, and that was one of the reasons that I ended up with it. I couldn't find any parts for them to fix them, but being I'm a real junk scrounger, I found a place over in eastern Washington one time that the Vintage Snowmobile Club had talked about, and the gal that had the place, her dad was a repairman and sold snowmobiles for years, and he passed away, and this warehouse is full of parts. And so from people from Washington, Oregon, and Idaho all went over there, and we went in and just bought whatever we thought was best. And I bought all the Fairbanks more starter parts. I've fixed them for years, and I've used everything up. I have nothing left. But anyway, so that I was able to help a lot of people and myself by doing that. But I want to dedicate this video to my friend Randy. I'll talk a little bit more about it later in the video and stuff. But the other thing I wanted to talk briefly about is, how I acquire stuff, or mostly in the past, because I started collecting stuff when it wasn't collectible. In the shop that I used to work at, I had a showroom and a waiting area and stuff, and so what I would do, just for something to look at while they're sitting there waiting for their car, their engine, or lawnmower, or whatever, I had a couple of old vintage motorcycles and some vintage outboard motors and small gas engines, a couple of hit-and-miss engines, and a couple old chainsaws, and people that, oh, you have one of those sitting underneath the garage bench there and it belonged to my dad or somebody, and I keep tripping over it and I'm tired of looking at it. Would you like it? Of course, I always say yes. And being in a position, I know that I could actually fix it if anybody could. And so a lot of that stuff just came to me easily and usually for free. But there's a couple of ways to look at it too. Is if somebody had their dad's chainsaw or an old gas engine or lawnmower laying around and they're tired of tripping over it and have no use for it. It's old enough nobody wants to fix it. And so they'll remember, down at the shop, and they'll say, if I took that to the scrapyard or the dump, I'll have to pay to get rid of it and waste my time and gas and stuff. And so I bet that guy down at that shop would like it. So I'll call him up and see and say, hey, would you like my dad's old chainsaw, lawnmower, blah, blah, blah. And of course I always said yes. And the other thing too is that they know that if anybody around could fix it, it would be me, because they'd seen all the things that I'd worked on over the years and other people that would not work on, and I would. So anyway, it's a win-win situation, because they got rid of a piece of junk, cleaned out their garage floor, so they quit tripping on it, and then of course I got a new piece of junk and keep me entertained and happy for a while. So it's just a good thing to do. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Randy just briefly. When he retired, he suffered from really bad health, and I think kind of going downhill and stuff. And he decided to give me this saw and the other saw, and his brother threw in some parts too. And because he knew that I'd try to fix it if possible and stuff like that, and he'd like to see it back in operation. But when people give you a gift, it's really nice, but he got the best gift of all. He got the gift of life through an organ transplant here recently. So I hope you'll be around for a while, Randy, and hope you have a quick recovery. We'll be happy to come over and see you soon. So anyway, let's see if we can fire this old hog up and see what you think. Now this thing originally had a compression release, and in the logging industry they usually took them out because over time they would get carbon in them or something. They'd stick open slightly and they'd lean them out and they'd burn a hole through the top of the piston. And so in a lot of saws it wasn't a big deal, but this weak starter system on these, it's wasn't one of the good ideas. So this one doesn't have one, so I'm going to get one, because this thing has a tremendous amount of compression. And so I've been out working on the chain and stuff. I had just a little teeny bit of oil and I tried to pull this through it. I pulled it right out of my hand, so I'm going to start it with some gloves. So I'll be right back. Okay, well, let's see if this old beast will start here. This has a 32-inch bar on it. And Randy also gave me a 27-inch bar. I'll probably put that on it. I'm not going to do any cutting today because I don't have any big wood down yet. But I'll do that, and I'll probably upgrade the chain. This one, man, the tooth on it's only like that. There's hardly anything left. But they still cut good when they're like that. But anyway, and then I wanted just to say a brief thank you again to Randy and his brother, because his brother threw this one in, and just did the video on it. Another perfect little runner. So these will be on the job again for a long time. So when people do something nice for you, you do something nice back for them. Vintage is best. We'll see you on the next video.